Cool, so today we're going to go through a bit more of an injury prevention thing for running, just because of the Urban Climb Run Club. There's a lot of you out there running, so I want to make sure that no one's getting injured. So this video is just going through how to prevent common injuries that come up with once you start running or you're just increasing the amount you run. We are actually at the end of the video, hence why I'm sweating gross already. But I just would want to ask for you to comment in the post, just asking about any questions that you do have about running or injuries that you experience when you do run. Because there is a future video I want to do about gait analysis. So the process of each stride, what's happening at each step, and why it's important to be able to have certain ranges of motion and everything like that. And also talk about some common injuries. But if there's any common injuries that you have, then I actually let us know and I'll try and explain things and help you out with them. Cool, enjoy the video. So a lot of issues come from in the knee and stuff, but that's also issues with the hip and the foot. So we want to try and stretch things, get things moving properly, but also get a bit more strength in where we need strength. So a good one that you've probably done before, I think Jack did one in the mobility class, but just to run through it again, we're going to do the couch stretch. So we're trying to get that extension through the hip. So as you're running, your leg's going to be extending back. If you don't have that range, it's going to come into your knee. Your knee's going to compensate for that movement. So you're just going to drop down all your weights in through this leg. You're going to tuck your tailbone underneath you and just draw yourself forward. So we're forcing ourselves into extension, and you should feel a bit of a stretch through the front of the hip. So those hip flexors are getting a stretch. And if you can't get 10 or at least 20 degrees of hip extension without any stretch in the hip here, then you really want to focus on this. If you can get all the way out here with no stretch, then you're pretty good. You can move on, you can get more extreme, you can try and pick this leg up. But if you've got a stretch here, just focus on this. So you're going to stay in here for 1 or 2, 2 to 3 minutes. Nice and easy. Do the other side. And you're on your way to getting sweet hip extension. And then we're going to get into frog stretch. So this is just to help open up the hips. So the way I get into it, I don't need to go super wide with my knees, but my feet and my knees are in line with each other. Turn the feet out, come down to your elbows, and you're going to use your hips to draw yourself back into the stretch. As I draw back, it's going to get pretty gnarly on the inside of my hip. And I'm just going to hang out here for another 2 to 3 minutes. And if it gets too intense, I can just come out of the stretch a little bit. If it eases off, I can pull myself back into it a bit more. And in this position as well, we can also work on a bit of rotation. So I can take one arm off, rotate down to the ground, come back up, rotate down. So this just jazzes it up a bit, so you have more fun with it, because 2 to 3 minutes in this position can get pretty dull. Cool. So then ball stuff. So a lot of issues with the knee, especially when you get pain on the outside of the knee and you get told to roll out your ITB or your iliotibial band. It's a big thick band of connective tissue that connects from your hip to a couple of spots in your knee, in around your knee. So rolling that out doesn't really change anything, but if we actually work on the muscles that attach to that connective tissue, then that will actually relax. So one is the TFL, so tensor fasciae latae, and the glute. So for glute max, well, for the whole glute really, we're just going to throw the ball on our butt, roll up onto the ball, and then you're just going to spend some time using your hips to roll around on that ball. Once you find a spot that's pretty niggly, use your foot, pull that leg up, and then kick it back down. And so just in this position for another 2 to 3 minutes, if you can handle that. And if this is fine, you can leave your foot up here and actually draw that knee up. So we're moving those tissues around with the ball in place, but then you can hold it here as well and then move yourself over the ball. So there's just a lot more weight going into that ball. So it's just going to be a bit more intense. but whatever works for you. If you're doing this and you're like tensing everything up, that's too much, so just take it back a bit and it should be sweet. So do that both sides. And that other muscle, so TFL, it's just along the side. It's a really thin muscle, it's just through here. So we're just gonna get the ball and we're just gonna roll it over, back and forth, down there. So if you find the knobbly part at the front of the hip, you're gonna be just off the side and down a little bit. And then get the ball in there and you're just going to rotate yourself over the ball. And it should be pretty gnarly in certain spots. You can move the ball up a little bit, rotate around on it, and just find spots that are a little bit more tender and just focus on those for a bit more. And if you can handle this for another 1 to 2 minutes, then that is all gravy. You can come out to the front a bit more as well and get those hip flexors while you're there. Cool beans. Next one is just a movement to try and ease up on the ankle and get a bit more toe extension. So when our foot's coming back, we need dorsiflexion, and then when our foot's kicking off, we need big toe extension. So my left foot's a pretty good example because it's lacking in both. So once I start getting here, this is nowhere near enough dorsiflexion, so then my heel starts coming off, and here, the ball of my foot starts coming off a bit too early. So because of that lack of movement, that's going to translate up into my leg, so my knee will have to compensate and my hip will have to compensate, which I don't want. So to try and improve that, you're just going to come up onto one leg, the other leg just comes out to the side, and with this arm, I'll come out this side, I'm just blocking my knee from coming in. So this arm is just going to come in line on the inside of my foot, like that. So as I rock over onto this heel, onto this foot, I'm going to try and keep that heel on the ground for as long as I can. So I'm going to get a bit of a stretch through the back of the leg and in the ankle a little bit. Then I'm going to finally let it come up, rocking right over onto the toes. And again, I'm going to try and keep the ball of the foot on the ground as long as I can, but I'm still trying to get that knee to the ground. So eventually the ball of the foot will come off, and I'm going to come all the way down. Then I'm just going to rock back and rock forward. So once you've got that movement down, you can speed it up a little bit, but you still want to make sure you're getting that stretch through the ankle and a stretch through the foot. And you're just doing this for about a minute on each side, just to warm them up, get them moving. And that is it for the mobility aspect of it. Now we're just going to get into a bit more strength. So strong muscles are able to hold their position for longer. If they're weak, they're going to fatigue. And then, so once they fatigue, they actually tense up. So that's why a lot of people have that ITB issue, is because they have weak hips, not particularly because it's like a problem, it's just weak, so it has to tense up to maintain that strength. So, what are we doing? Glute bridges. Cool. So, first one, everyone would have done a glute bridge. So, nice and easy, both legs all the way up. You're going to kick one leg off, and then you're going to slowly lower down on one leg. If that's nice and easy, you can just do a full single leg bridge, coming all the way up. And you really want to focus on the glute firing. So maybe stick a hand on your butt so you can feel your glute contract and going all the way down. Nice and smooth. And once you got that down pat, you can come up on both legs, bring your feet off the toes off the ground, and then you're going to slowly walk the feet down. And you want to do it slowly, so you're having to brace everything as that foot's coming down. If you just go really fast, you don't need to have as much control, but we want to work on that control. So just going to come down nice and slow. Cool. Try and keep your hips nice and high the whole time. Don't let them come down. This is bad. This is good. Cool. So with glute bridges, you're doing like 10 to 12 each. If you're doing the walks, which will target your hamstrings a lot more. Try and aim for like a minute of continuous work. Cool. We'll go on this side. So, to work on that hip external rotation, which is TFL, certain tissues of the glute max and glute med, all very important muscles. A lot of people would have done like clams, so you're going to have a band in between your legs to add resistance, but it's a really simple exercise. You're keeping your feet together and just lifting your knees like that. Another one, you're going to have one leg out the back. I don't know if you can see that. You're going to bring one, like top leg is straight. You're going to bring it back behind you, rotate it so the foot is pointing towards the ground, and then bring it up. So in this position, we're just really focusing on those external rotators. And with these and the clams, you're aiming for like, again, 10 to 15 or so. Cool. Banded walks. Unfortunately, I only have this super thick crazy band. It's probably a bit better with something a bit lighter to start off with, because we don't need a huge amount of force with the bands. And also, if it's lower, it's going to be harder. The higher up, the easier the movement will be. So I'm going to bring my legs out a little bit so to get a bit of tension in the band. I'm going to try and keep my knees pointing out as much as I can. And then just stepping back. And then stepping forward. So as I'm stepping forward, the band wants to pull me in, but I'm resisting that movement in. I'm keeping my feet out, which is really going to cook those glutes. So again, this one, you're just going for like a minute, walking back and forth. Doesn't matter if you've got lots of space or very little space, just go for time and you should get a good band walk workout. Cool. Then, if you make a makeshift step with some blocks, we're just going to work on our calves, but we really want to work on that eccentric load. So this is concentric, everything's tightening up to shorten, but then I have eccentric. So it's still under load, but it's lengthening. And this is what happens when we run. So every time I step, that's lengthening, and so it's keeping an eccentric load, which is what the Achilles tendon is so well adapted for. So we want to work on that by lowering down as slow and controlled as possible, and as far as we can. Try not to lose balance. If you have something to hold on to, this is way better. And then you're coming up and slowly coming down. And just going for 10 to 12, maybe 3 reps. All of these try and do like 3 times in this session. Try not to lose balance. And you can add weight as well. So if you're doing both, oh geez, nailed it. So you're just adding weight and coming down. Otherwise, even better, come up on both. Oh geez. Terrible example. Don't lose balance. Don't lose balance. Oh geez. Okay, you get the idea. I can't even do it. But you would come up on both, take a foot down, and come lower down on one leg. But having something to balance on is ideal, unless you're somehow better than me, but that's impossible. Cool. And then we want to work on some quads. So if you get a weight, I'm going to be working on my right leg, so I'm going to hold the weight in my left. So as I'm coming off, I also have to work on countering this weight. So as I step back, I'm just focusing on this knee coming forward and stepping up and coming back to that original spot. So coming down, just tapping the ground with your knee and then coming back up.
So you can do lunges coming forward, which is really, really good as well. But that's putting a lot of strain on the tendon that comes through over the patella, which is fine. But if you're running a lot, you're putting a lot of strain on that muscle, on that tendon as well. Whereas stepping back, we're just focusing on the quads and the glutes. And also, we can focus on that tendon and the quads by doing a reverse Nordic curl. So, kneeling up nice and tall, hands up, and just gonna lower yourself down, trying to keep a straight line from your knees to your shoulders. Nice and controlled. As soon as you start feeling you're gonna lose it, you can just drop down to your heels, come back up, and come down. Ideally, you can come back up as well, but we want to focus on the lower. So this, I'm out of breath, but is an eccentric load for the quads, which is really, really good. So we really want to focus on coming back down. Cool.